Hey, everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. I hope Holly's cheersing me. Yay. I hope your week has been fantastic. Hope your seahorses are great. If you missed this episode because I'm like literally half an hour late, no biggie. I am so sorry, guys. It's open chat anyways today. We could not get Art to come. His schedule wasn't working. Last week we had talked about trying to get Art, who wrote an article about law or something that's going on with the seahorses. And unfortunately, his schedule, he just couldn't accommodate. We're still going to try to get him at some point, but it is just open chat tonight. Excuse me. Hey, Seahorse Corner. I'm losing my voice now. It's been a hectic day in case you can't tell, but we're glad to see you guys. If you're on Instagram, don't forget, you can feel free to listen in. But if you want, my overlay's not on. I just realized I got to turn that on real quick, y'all. Hang on.
Where's our seahorses?
Yeah, there they are. Okay. Now the guy's eating my head again. Yay. Okay. Anyhow, if you're on Instagram, it's going to look kind of funny, but you can always listen in. I've got Cheryl and Holly with me this week so far. And you can always jump over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and subscribe. I need to check that count. I got to do that 3,000 sub giveaway. Anyways, it's been hectic. Sorry. Hope your week was better than mine. It's got to get better, right, guys? It's just got to get better. But so anyways, we're just going to jump right in. It's open chat. You got any questions? You want to jump in yourself? Feel free. I do have one last thing to say. I have to be off by like 9:30ish. So we can't run late tonight. I know, even though I'm late, we got to get off early, but I'm working on my coding class again, and I've got an assignment that's due by midnight. So I've got to get it done. Anyhow, with that all said, happy Wine Wednesday. Holly, I think right before we started, do you want to start us off by telling us how Thing 2 is doing? I know you just told me, but tell everybody.
Yeah. So I don't know if people remember. So last Wednesday we were talking about Thing 2, and I've been treating him, for bacterial enteritis, I guess you would call it, the bacterial infection. And so he's been treated for about 5 months now. And he wasn't doing that well as of last week. So Dan suggested last Wednesday that I stop the antibiotics. He says, you've got to stop the antibiotics now or they will kill him at this point. So I took Thing 2 off the antibiotics, which means I'm no longer treating the infection with medication. So I started doing clean water every day with molecular hydrogen tablets, and then treating him topically with Alamax. And so after I took him off the antibiotics, there was a dip in his health. I thought I was going to, and I had, agreed with Dan to check in with him on Friday evening, and let him know, how things were going. And it turned out I was leaving for the weekend to go to Lake Tahoe on a trip. And I could tell Thing 2 was starting to get his gas bubble disease back. He was starting to get a little floaty, but what he'll do is he'll lodge himself somewhere in a plant or against something, to keep from floating away. And he wasn't completely floating yet. He was just getting buoyant. So I asked Dan about that, if I could use Diamox intermittently to stop him from floating, because that, doesn't actually, treat the problem. It just stops the symptoms. And Dan agreed, well, he'll be more comfortable if he's not floating, but it'll be hard on his renal system. So try to avoid using it until he's actually floating. And he said, go ahead, go away for the weekend. Like, there's nothing you can do really. So for the weekend, you would have lost him anyway had you been home. So don't worry about it. Saturday morning, I set him up with his clean water, his molecular hydrogen, and I left him, came back Sunday evening. and he was floating by then, fully floating. So I gave him another clean water change, gave him a Diamox tablet, and the next morning I repeated that because normally I do everything. I take care of the tanks in the morning, and I needed to get back on that schedule after my trip. So even though I just get him a Diamox, I've got a big supply. I'm not worried about it. So I gave him fresh, clean water again.
Thanks to Heather.
In the morning, and another Diamox tablet. And late 3 hours, he wasn't floating anymore. And he was hungry. So I gave him some food. He ate. Since then, I've been giving him clean water, his hydrogen. I've been treating him intermittently with Alamax liquid on his skin lesions, but nothing other than that. And he started to get a little more alert at times. He'll sit up, he'll hang out, he'll eat. Sometimes he doesn't want to eat. He lies down to sleep sometimes, like when it's getting to be nighttime, when things start getting darker, or after a meal he wants to lie down, but he gets up when lights come up in the morning, and he looks around for his food. So I don't know. I still don't know if he's going to make it or not.
Right.
But he's in.
He's hanging in. And I mean, that's it. I'm curious to see how the hydrogen tablets go, because that'll be very interesting. Hey, RG Reef, how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just glad he's.
I mean, if he does recover, I could only attribute it really to that and clean water at this point. Right. Because I'm not giving him antibiotics anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's all cross fingers, say a little prayer for thing 2. But I mean, it's cool that he's hung in this long, and that you've got this experience now. You can tell, you could share with somebody else how to do all of this. And if the hydrogen works, you'll know that too.
Yeah. So I'm getting a lot of experience and watching him and see how he's feeling. I don't handling him, I think, causes stress.
Yeah.
So I don't have him on a regular schedule with giving him the Alamax. I'm not giving it to him like twice a day. Today I didn't give him any. I gave him some yesterday afternoon. I've noticed it's better to give it to him like at the end of the day, so that he'll sleep afterwards, because by morning he seems to forget what had happened. If I do it earlier in the day, I think he holds a grudge, and he thinks about being handled. And I swear he does something interesting when I'm not around or I'm not doing anything with him. He'll sit up and, sit hitched to something, sit next to something. So he's sitting upright. When he thinks he's going to get treated or handled, or if I'm around too much, he lays down on the floor. Jeez. Like, Mom, I don't feel good. Don't give me my medicine today. Right.
Like a dang kid.
So I've been giving him breaks, intermittently.
Yeah, I know that makes sense.
Going back to the debride on his tail. I don't know. I kind of wanted to see what you guys think of that, or should I skip it?
I mean, it was working, wasn't
it? Yeah. The tail is looking 500% better. I've never seen a tail that had that much damage that ever came back and healed. So I have to assume that the debride is working on it. It's amazing, because I
haven't used it for a while.
Yeah, I give him 99% odds of losing part of his tail.
Right.
Based on even just what I was seeing a week ago.
Yeah.
And latest
So
pictures is
I'm seeing more. To me, it's looking like he has more of the dead tissue now, the whitish, on his tail, along with more regular skin. So I'm seeing both. But I'm wondering, should I go ahead and use the debride on his tail? Do you think?
I'm trying to remember exactly. I remember that it did amazing things, and Cheryl was so surprised by this product. But then, didn't you think that there was an adverse reaction? Something I felt like you said something happened, and you thought it was the debride.
I'm not really sure. It was his but it might have been his reaction to the Alamax, or just the fact that he had been on the antibiotics for so long. I don't know. The new thing of debride I got is different consistency than the one that I had before. So I don't know if it's a little different. I don't know if it's stronger because it hasn't sat around for long.
Yeah, but, we don't know, but go ahead.
But I mean, the not as strong apparently version worked.
Yeah, so I would try it.
I would use it, at least on his tail. Now his body doesn't have a hole anymore.
Right,
the hole is gone, but I see the signs like his skin looks like almost cloudy there in that which to me is like infection, but I'm thinking it's internal coming out. Does that make
like Dan was saying? Yeah, Dan was saying that last week, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know for sure. And Seahorse Corner said, I guess I can put it up, can't I? Sorry, guys. That you should water it down with something if you do. What do you think, Cheryl? Because I just have never used it. I've never had this particular problem, so I'm not sure.
Dan told me not to mix it with anything. He says if you're going to use it the way they say to use it. He says don't thin it out. He says you can put like she said, I guess she told Cheryl to put Neosporin over the top of it. Right?
I think that was Heather that said that. Use the Neosporin. The thing is with the debride, okay, first of all, let me back up for a minute. I've used Alamax, and I've gotten Alamax on cuts. And I don't know what kind of pain sensors seahorses have, but when I put it on a cut, it burns like a you-know-what. I mean, it is very, very painful. As opposed to when I've used debride and gotten it on a cut, I have no pain with it. And that is a definite, in my opinion. I'm assuming they have, they feel pain just like we do, or they wouldn't stop hitching and things like that. So I'm thinking that the debride is a better choice at this point on his tail.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start using it again.
Yeah, I put some Alamax on an open cut, and my hand felt like it was on fire.
I know, but we had that conversation last week. We think you're just weird, Cheryl. I'm just kidding. But Dan swears by Alamax, man. So I think you're right, Holly, to try it again if you want, and especially because if you do try it, you're going to see if it does have the same effect, and then you'll know that's what it is.
I think it was Kimberly that said to put the Neosporin over the top of the.
And I don't know about that because Neosporin, is it okay to go? I mean, I just don't know. Would it affect the water at all? The salt water?
No, just like the debride and stuff. I mean, a little might come off, but all it is it's just an antibacterial ointment, So I don't think
it's
really.
It's like using the old what used to be bio bandage. It's the same principle.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Try it out. And we're gonna quiz you next week. See how it went. How about your other tanks, Holly? What else? Or did you have more to?
Everybody else is doing really well. Yeah. Everybody else is fine. So.
I like your ding dong female who's always getting herself into trouble.
Oh, I have. today's tank cleaning day, and I always have someone that throws a fit. But today I had 3. I had 2 males along with the 1 female that usually throws a fit. Because what I do when I'm cleaning the grow out tank, it's bare bottom. So I'll move all their decor with them attached still, generally, from one side of the tank to the other. So while I'm doing that side, and everything that they are not hitched to, I pull out. So there's only a few things left in the tank. And so I'll take out their dishes and, all the little things. And if I take out a favorite or their little shell food dish, invariably someone will swim over there and where it was and throw themselves on and where's my mom? You stole my hitch or my dish or whatever it may be. And today I had 3 of them all doing that.
There is an easier way to do that. Get yourself some wave makers. Make them build baskets so they're Seahorse safe. And the way my bare bottom tanks are, where the wave makers are, I plug them in and it blows all the detritus and debris off of everything into one corner.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the film though, when I'm doing, because I do all the glass once a week.
Yeah, I do too.
I take the magic eraser and I go over all the glass surfaces. So when I'm doing that, I move all the stuff over to one side and then I move it back to the other side. But I take out everything that no one's attached to. So
and then they get mad.
2 or 3 things left for them to hitch to, plus the return nozzles. So then, they want to swim around. Then they notice that their favorite thing isn't there and they throw a hissy fit.
I've never ever had seahorses that throw themselves on the floor. You have. I think your seahorses are spoiled, Holly. I'm just kidding.
I don't remove the hitches unless I'm putting in fresh, clean hitches, because the wave makers literally
blow off
everything clean right over into one corner. And so, other than occasional moving a couple things around a little bit in case something gets stuck, all I do is siphon off water off of one corner to get all the debris out.
Right.
And I do that daily.
So you just don't remove the hitches?
Well, I do that daily, but I don't scrub the tank daily. I'm talking about weekly when I'm scrubbing the tank. Because then, I do go over every surface. And
I think it's impressive, though, Holly, that you do that because, I made the mistake, I believe now it's a mistake, of using rock in the all-in-one. And so it's like, and it's aquascaped, you know what I mean? Like there's rocks upon rocks. I can't really move them. So I found that it's really hard for me to clean the bottom because I don't want to move the stuff.
Stuff gathers around the decorations sometimes, but they're not anchored. Like nothing I have in there is anchored. It's all movable. So like I have like little plastic plants and stuff in there, and they move them around because they'll be attached to it with their tail, and then they'll travel a little bit and the plant will travel with them.
Nice.
But it's easy to clean.
Yeah.
And when I don't wash everything when I clean the whole tank. I'm just taking it out so I can clean, the
underneath.
bottom and stuff underneath.
I'm
but
taking
if I need to, I do a bleach bucket and put stuff in the bleach bucket, for a few minutes and then, wash it off and let it dry. But I don't need to do that with everything every week. I really don't get a lot of algae in that tank, except for in the darn overflow boxes. They're too skinny for me to fit my fingers down in there to clean it.
Get a brush.
Even a toothbrush. They're so thin. They're like, I can even fit a sponge in there, like a cleaning brush or something.
They sell them. There are brushes like I had to find
in there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I got brushes. I'll see if I can find them in a minute and try to show
I
you
have
guys.
the
But
tube
I have
cleaning
brushes that
brushes.
literally are made for. Yes, that's what I was gonna say.
I have
That's
those. I
yeah,
have those, but they're not ideal for that because the box is square and it's long and it's, it's like this, but
yeah,
there's like no space. And
yeah.
it's just a pain in the butt. And I tried my cleaning brushes in there, but all it does really is push stuff around and clean right where the brush is. It doesn't do the whole thing. It's
Right.
just a pain in the butt. So those are all full of, but the rest of
Hey,
the time,
Francis.
great.
Well, and I was gonna say you're lucky though because I don't know if it's my lighting or the like. Have you guys? First of all, anybody in the audience, I want to know your cleaning schedule. How often do you like bleach your ornaments or clean under rocks? How often do you clean your tanks? I'm just curious. I want to hear from you. And in my case, my tank, I told you guys a few weeks ago that it's gotten this long, like string looking green algae and it just appeared out of nowhere. I don't know if it's the light or if it's the, because there's rock in the tank, maybe, because of the things like phosphate and stuff inside the rocks. But these were completely dried rocks that, I mean, it's driving me nuts because I'm having to clean more often and I don't like it.
Is it bryopsis or is it green hair algae?
I don't really, I meant to post a picture. I will when we're done. I will post a picture because I don't know, to be honest. It could be not, it's not like the bryopsis I've seen before, but it's something I've never seen before. So it could be whatever. I don't know. So
Well, my
I'll post a
display
picture when we're done.
tank is totally different. I mean, because I have the live rock and stuff in there, and I call it the swamp.
Yeah.
So some days I get algae out of there every week, and that tank
Yay.
is so much harder to clean than my grow out tank is so easy. The grow out tank takes me, I want to say today I did the whole thing in like 40 minutes. And the display tank, because I have to spend sometimes like half an hour to an hour pulling algae, scrubbing walls. There's coralline algae growing, so I'm like scraping it off with a plastic razor blade, and oh, it's a
I
pain.
hear you.
I'm
I
all
hear you.
hindsight is 2020. Ever hear
And
that?
yep. And the really crazy thing, I'm about to go take a picture and post it while we're live because the really crazy thing is even in Seahorse Corner, I'm curious, how often do you have to clean your shower curtain rings? Because the shower curtain rings, this green algae thing is growing on those. Okay.
I
Real
get
quick.
them on mine in the display tank.
Well, I'm gonna go take a picture. So while I'm gone, because I want to hear about your other tanks too, Holly, like the freshwater and everything, and I want to catch up with Cheryl. But Francis wants to know: would chloroquine phosphate be safe to dose in a display tank that has mushroom coral? Cheryl, do you know? And I'm gonna go take a picture. So I'll be right back.
I would not try it because the chloroquine phosphate is basically designed to kill internal parasites, specifically Uronema. And a lot of this stuff that we use for that, corals and invertebrates in general, do not do well. I would have to, in fact, Francis, what I need to do is some background research because I know people have used it in reef tanks, but I'm not sure if they pulled the fish and treated them separately, which is what I would think they would have done. The thing is, it's basically it's a form of malaria, and it basically becomes insisted in a variety of tissues within the seahorses, and that's what it's designed to kill. The problem with it is it can be, with seahorses anyway, it can be a toxic if you're not very careful with your dosage. I would not treat a display tank with that.
I'm still here. I just had to refresh my beverage.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Are you using this for Francis? Are you using this for the combs?
And yeah, okay, I'm back. Sorry. And Francis, you're welcome to jump in. It's open chat. And then, okay, let's see. Until he gets back to us, Maria said, I have live gorgs, so I don't clean them, just turkey based or daily and water changes. I think that was what I did wrong with the all-in-one, is I wasn't turkey basting the rock like I should be, like every week, because sometimes I'm lazy. Shocker, I know. But
I do that every day in the display tank, because what happens is the seahorses are scattering food, and then it gets stuck in that algae on the rocks.
Right.
And I have a cleaning crew, but they're not going to eat everything. So after every meal, I siphon. It ends up being about a gallon of water that I take, but I'm siphoning out like all that leftover mysis that I can find, off of the rocks and the algae and out of the dish, wherever it is. It's a pain, but yeah, every time they eat, I do that.
That's smart, because like I said, I think, and when I show you guys these pictures, just please understand that today is water cleaning day, and that's why it looks so bad. But this is how bad it gets in 1 week. I have to pull this shit every week. So I'm kind of thinking that because that I got a cheap light, which was probably, I'm thinking about taking the light off, seriously, because except for pictures, they don't care. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm thinking about changing my lighting too. I think that has a lot to do with it, but my lighting is such a pain in the butt to change that I haven't tackled it yet.
Well, no, I'm saying I might just take the light off completely. No light, room light. That's what, Cheryl, isn't that what you do? Oh no, you use the radions, right?
Well, I have, it depends on the tank.
Right.
Some of them, like my nurseries and my garage tank, I just use the Marineland submersible wands. And that way, if something gets knocked into the tank, I don't have to worry about it. And it gives more than enough light. Plus, I can keep, like with the garage tank, half of it is lit. One side is lit. The other side stays very dark unless I move the wand. And the seahorses seem to love it, because they'll come in and pig out in the lighted area. And then once they're full, they'll go back over into the darker areas oftentimes. They don't necessarily always hang out in the light. So it gives them the option of where they want to be. And yeah, I have reef breeder photons on some of my tanks.
Oh, that's it.
But those are also, normally when I'm using them, they're set on the lowest setting. And I really haven't had algae problems with them.
Well, see I'm gonna get ready to show you guys the pictures, and then I'll jump back to the comments. But this tank, I knew I wasn't going. This tank, I really wanted them to be breeders. They're still not having babies, by the way. Grr! I'm so angry. It's been months, but they're dancing like little fools, and he keeps looking pregnant, and then he's not. I'm about to smack him or something.
Well, that's normal.
I know, but I want babies. But anyways, I knew I wasn't gonna like in my 65, I'm trying to get back to the Gorgonians and the macros and the pretty tank. But the all-in-one, I knew from the start that I was just going to make it really basic, because I wanted to focus on the seahorses, right? So when I got the light, it was really just for pictures. So I didn't I didn't need light for anything, any real purpose. So I just wanted pretty. And so I bought like a $50, $60, internet clip-on. It's just, I could show you guys, but I think I've showed you before. And it's just like, I don't know if the spectrums are right. I did all that research for tanks where I have coral or macros, but in this tank, I just got a cheap light. So anyways, let me show you guys the pictures, and then we'll jump back. Oh, I forgot to share myself.
Keep in mind too, different lighting. It's like with the reef breeders that I have 50 gazillion different types of lighting I can do with them.
You see that crap?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is I don't have any like that.
And then I took a couple pictures just to show, but like I said, guys, this will be gone tomorrow, but this is what forms in a week. It's got to be the light, right? He doesn't mind, but it's gross. I hate it. It's getting on the rocks. And yeah, it's just, there's a couple of places it's like fuzzy, like normal algae that you'd see on rocks and stuff, but there's these
mine's more
long strings. Like one string will grow, if I let it grow, it'd probably grow all the way across the tank. See? That's my picture, but
Is
I mean,
it
they're
just
long.
are these just coming out in single strands, or do they have like multiple stem or multiple shoots coming off of each strand?
I would say they're single strand, but as you see, like in this picture, there's a bunch there. In some places, there's a bunch of, or it could be a different algae. I don't know, but there's a bunch of fuzzy strands, and then they grow into the really long.
The
strands.
stringy ones, though, it almost does look like Cheryl said, like there's one stem and then a bunch of little scragglies coming off of that. In that one previous picture, it did kind of look like that. It's hard to tell, but
yeah, I'm sorry. I'll try to take better pictures, but
Yeah, because
anybody who knows what this is, because now it's on the rocks, you see, and I hate scrubbing rocks. I just hate scrubbing rocks, and I don't want to do it. And he doesn't want his rock taken, and yeah, so just goes to show everybody deals with this crap. If you think that it's just you, it's not.
Speaking of lighting, in my display tank, I don't really have coral other than I have one little piece of GSP coral. If I switched my lighting to like the normal spectrum that you use for a freshwater tank where it's more yellow, would that not work for the GSP? Does it need the...
Oh, no, I can answer that. I have, in my macro tank, I did freshwater lighting. I did the 24/7 fluval freshwater plants or something like that. Like I think I did get freshwater plants.
The GSP is going to be okay with that then?
Oh, yeah.
Should be? Okay, because I'm thinking about switching to that because my light has a program for freshwater also, besides all the fancy reef stuff. And it's more a yellowish light, which the seahorses look better in for pictures anyway, I've found. Because the bluish tint, doesn't work well for pictures. So I just didn't want to hurt the GSP. Because other than that, the only other thing in there is algae. I don't think it'll bother the shrimps or the crabs or the seahorses or fish.
Just
the
make
only
sure,
thing I was worried about is the coral.
Well, all I was going to say is, because like I said, in my 29-gallon that had all those beautiful macros, that I used the Fluval freshwater plant light, and the one thing I had to be careful of is that's the light. When I moved the seahorses into, or no, that was the first tank. I didn't move them. No, okay, let me start over. So the seahorses were under some cheap light or something, and then I added the macros, and I wanted them to grow, so I got the freshwater plant light, and I put it on, and that's when my male aborted his babies. And that's the one time that my huge, gigantic 12-inch beautiful male, it was like the second time he'd been pregnant, and when I changed the light was too bright, and I don't know, it just stressed him out. He didn't like it, and literally that day I had little, not fry yet, like half egg with a head babies that we know Heather managed to save a few of those, but I didn't have any idea what I was doing back then, so I didn't even try. But just so, anyways, the point was, be careful if you get the freshwater lighting. If you get the plant lighting, don't make it too strong. Like, ease them into it.
I don't even know what, I haven't used it yet. I'm gonna have to check out the thing, but it's a pre-programmed thing that I can use, or I can program it myself, but it's so much easier when I use their program.
Right. Check their program.
It's worse than doing the ink birds Cheryl was talking about.
Right.
You should see that to program my lighting. It's like a day project.
I know.
It's hell.
I know it. See, and the light I have right now is really easy, and it's just simple. But Seahorse Corner, I love the idea of bleaching the shower rings. I'm going to do that because that's easier. The rock, unfortunately, I will have to.
And I do
scrub.
like Heather does. What I do is I keep, because the shower curtain rings are cheap. I have a few sets of them, so I'll switch them out. Some will go in the bleach bucket, and I'll just put last week's back in, or whatever.
Yep. And I'm showing
They
Heather's.
do dry pretty quickly too, though. After they'll be ready to go back in the same
Well,
day.
and I know how to. I usually use Prime, so I'm doubly. I'm okay, But and Seahorse Corner. I'm reading all your comments. I'm trying to put them all up, but lighting, and then you're right, filtration. And I think, and Ray has told me this before too, that I need to be doing larger water changes. I upped them from what I was doing, but I think I just need to do either an extra water change a week or a bigger water change when I do it. So because I do have an overrated skimmer, but it's only like it's a 40-gallon all-in-one, and it's only rated for I think 60 or 65, so it's not that higher rated. Usually I go double, not one and a half. And I do have the UV on there, but other than that, there's just a sock and rock and rocks, sock and rock and rocks. So I bet you're right. It is what it is, but I am gonna up my water changes because that's in a week. That nasty crap. Ugh. And does anybody have any tips for scrubbing rock? Like, is there anything else you can do besides scrub rock? Like, we need a product that doesn't hurt anything in the tank, but will just kill algae. Oh wait, peroxide, which
I
we're going to
did
talk about in the
peroxide back in the day, but I have
Seahorses.
so much rock, I'm not going to sit there and do it all. But in the beginning, I did do peroxide dips on my live rock, and it was something like there was a certain percentage, and I forget what the recipe was, but there was a certain amount of peroxide for water, and you don't go over 3 minutes, I think. Like it was about 1 minute, and the corals would be okay, but it would kill the algae.
Well, and see, I have
Had to do
peroxide.
the time right and the right percentage with the water.
Well, I'll look it up, and thanks for the tip. But I actually peroxide dosed my reef with all the coral and my macro tank and never had any problems. It was a lower dose, but I'm going to look into that too and come back next week and tell you guys.
I'm doing dosing, but not enough for the algae, obviously.
Right.
I dose for ciliates, but I haven't tried for the algae. And part of it is because I think the invertebrates are more sensitive to it. And
right.
I
don't have them.
Shrimp in there.
Yeah, I don't have any shrimp. So, but Cheryl, what were you going to say?
Magnesium will kill a lot of algae without harming a lot of corals or fish.
I forgot about that.
I have used that very effectively on a tank that was getting overtaken. It was a tank somebody gave me along with all its inhabitants, and it hadn't been maintained. Gotcha. And I hit that sucker with magnesium, and it did a great job.
And I've heard of that before. Now that you said it, I remember it. But I just know that if I can get better pictures, if anybody can ID the algae species, that'd be amazing. Because I know different things work for different things.
Yeah, the difference is Bryopsis comes out with long, like stalks, and then you'll see it looks like little fingers coming off of it.
Right. And I'll go try to get a picture real close up to the bottom to see if it's doing that. Because you're right.
Yeah.
That one picture you were showing kind of looked like that. One of those two pictures looked like that to me, but it's hard to tell from.
Sure. And it just didn't look like, because I had Bryopsis in the 65, and that was to get out of there. But I can't even remember how I did, but it just didn't look the same as this. So, but it could be, I don't know. Hey, Francis, how are you?
He's smiling.
Good. How are you guys?
Do you have updates for us? Anything new?
So my seahorses are doing a lot better. I updated Dr. Cheryl yesterday about the formalin bath, and so far they've been doing super well. But now my issue is when to transfer them over to the display tank. And because the initial display tank, I'm assuming, has the ciliate infection still, I'm trying to determine what medication might be the best instead of CP, since CP can be toxic for the soft corals. Yeah, and I actually found one study that says people, or in China, they use clove extract to treat ciliate infections, and it's been showing that there is quite a successful margin for that. So I've just been kind of reading up all these different studies.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That,
right, of course, but that's interesting because clove oil is what you use to euthanize. So that's kind of.
And clove oil, I think, is used for euthanizing fish, I believe.
Right.
Like anestheticizing fish. There we go.
And I do know that I asked Dan this question last week. You know, how
Yeah.
long? What do you do? When can you put the seahorse back in the tank? And what if it's still infected? And I think he
Yeah.
talked a little bit about it. But Cheryl, what is your thoughts?
Okay. Well, one thing with chloroquine phosphate, I know you had a question earlier about that.
Mhm.
You've recently got your formalin, and you treated them with
Yeah.
formalin.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in both of these meds are designed to treat parasites, essentially. And I would back off on using the chloroquine phosphate until you see what the formalin has already done.
Right.
Yes.
You may, the thing is, if you've got uronema, the formalin is probably not going to kill it. You're going to need
Yeah.
the
It's
chloroquine
not
phosphate.
uronema. The doctor was able to identify that it wasn't that,
Oh,
but
good.
because it is still resistant to Metroplex, I'm just having the anxiety of if it's resistant to one medication, what other medications will it not be effective against?
Yeah. I
And
would be at this
BP,
point. Yeah, I'd be at this point more concerned with lesions associated with the parasites dying, assuming that they had them after
yeah,
the formalin treatment, and I would be more inclined to look for any negative responses from that where they are, because what happens is when you're killing internal parasites, they're going to die, yes, but they're also going to
yeah,
leave holes, which become a haven for bacteria.
yeah,
Oof.
And that's why I'm advising you back off. Let's wait and see what they're doing. The other thing I found using chloroquine
mhm,
phosphate seahorses that did have uronema is using the normal dosage prescribed for saltwater fish.
okay,
You have about 100% mortality.
Oof.
yeah,
And so what I did is
that's bad.
I started experimenting with it, and I found I could do 25% dose the first dose, wait 3 days, increase it to 50%
50. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
after that.
Yeah, I always follow your instructions. I
Yeah.
I
But
concur
wait,
with the
sorry, but
25% increase.
yes, absolutely. But wait, Cheryl, so basically, because he knows it's not, excuse me, because he knows it's not uronema, he should just do formalin, not chloroquine phosphate. Just do the formalin, and but the ultimate question, and I can't remember how Dan answered it last week. Everybody go watch last week. But is what do you do like once you've done the baths, long or short or long term formalin? And you've kept the seahorse in a hospital tank, and then you think you've rid the seahorse of ciliates. What
Yep.
about putting them back in the main tank? Won't the still be high ciliates? So do you
So this,
advise like really huge
Well,
water changes, or
Well,
what do
that's
you
why
advise?
I don't treat for ciliates for that
now,
reason, because I'd
hold on, back
kill my
up.
yeah,
display tank.
Well, one of the problems with uronema is they do not require a fish host.
Yeah, but
They're allowed.
Chilean.
Cheryl, it's not uronema. The vet said it's not uronema.
Oh,
So
okay.
right. So if it's not
Yeah,
uronema,
so we're
then you
talking
don't know what
ciliates.
this. Yeah, if
So
it's
But
just
Chilean.
ciliates,
had that question too, because I'm sure in my display tank they have ciliates. I'm sure of it.
Yeah,
But when I talked to Dan about it, he says, I really wouldn't worry about it because you really can't treat. If I treat them and put them back in, they're going to get the ciliates again. I cannot treat my display tank because I will kill the other creatures in it.
right,
I
So
right,
I
right. But
treat
the
think
them for the ciliates. I just have to, it's like fleas, I guess, for dogs. Apparently, the ones
it's
I have they're not killing them. They're
yeah,
just probably annoying.
right, like
Yeah,
yeah,
ciliates. Just okay. Ciliates, like a lot of other critters in the saltwater that we never see because they're so tiny. It's more about managing them versus
management,
killing them. So,
eradicating
like,
them.
that's why I'm wondering what I mean. Like Cheryl, when you treat a seahorse for ciliates for a ciliate infection, what do you do to the display tank? You treating the seahorse in a hospital tank. Do you do anything to the display tank
Well,
to
yeah.
clean it
Well,
up?
my tanks are a little different because I don't have corals in them. They're
Right.
bare bottom. I
Mhm.
do not have any snails in them. I do not have any invertebrates. It's strictly
Yeah.
seahorses. End of discussion. So
Right.
I can get away with treating a quote, one of my quote display tanks with formalin because I'm not worried about
The
killing
other
off
creatures.
And that's
Yeah.
my grow out
Yeah.
tank because all that's in there is the seahorses. So that's treatable. But in
Yeah.
my display tank, there's other kinds of things. And that's
Yeah.
why I dose with peroxide. I use peroxide for that reason. We had, and I don't remember her name, but there was someone on this show, a guest that Kelly had, that of how to do it and how much to use. And that's
From
how
Humble
I'm
Fish.
doing it.
Humble Fish.
So I
Okay,
believe
yeah,
it's
and
about
it's
1 milliliter.
every 8 hours, and I don't have a doser. Like you can get like an automatic doser for your tank. I don't have that.
Yeah.
What I do is I add it twice a day. Like in the morning, after I do my siphoning and replace water, I give them a dose of peroxide, and I do it again in the afternoon, evening when they get their last meal and siphoning. Then I add more peroxide.
Okay. An easier way to work with that is most ciliates have a semi-permeable membrane. And as such, they require a specific amount of salinity. When you drop the salinity on them,
That's
they
true too.
basically fill up with water and explode. So if you drop
Yeah.
your specific gravity, you can actually, in many instances, virtually eliminate the problem without having to resort to any kinds of meds. And this is one of the reasons people always used to think I was crazy when I said 1.020.
That's
And
what mine is. I do
yeah,
that one. I've even gone to 1.019. It is
yeah.
sometimes.
Okay, so wait. I have a question. So,
And the
we lost
shrimps and
Francis.
everything are fine. They don't seem to care.
That's what I was going to ask you, is if it affected the shrimp or any coral or anything like that.
Hasn't affected the
Yeah.
shrimp. I have a GSP, like I said, that's doing fine. But yeah, my salinity is generally around 1.020. Sometimes it dips below. Sometimes it goes a little higher, but that's my target.
So,
well,
Cheryl, real quick, I wanted to know though, if you had a tank that was at 1.025, I can't ever remember the numbers off the top of my head, but if you had a tank at like a reef level or something, and then you lowered the salinity to kill the ciliates, then wouldn't you need to desperately do a huge water change, because dead ciliates are still adding to organics, aren't they? Or no?
yeah, you'd still want to. That's one of the things. If you have reason to believe you have a ciliate infection, and you're going to see it in the way they're ingesting food and the way they're using their trigger, their respiratory rate, things like that. Yeah, peppermints.
So,
Yeah, I need to
followed.
get some peppermints.
Yeah, they
But
don't mind.
if you see the horses with labored respirations, they're trigger breathing. In other words, each time they take a breath, the trigger is pulling down. They're having trouble ingesting food. You've got some major infestations going. But
Yeah.
even if the difference is, I've learned, after over 17 years, I'll sit there and I'll look at a seahorse and go, "You
So I
need
followed
treatment."
Dr. Cheryl's statements throughout this entire past year. So right now the hyposalinity, or the salinity level, is at 1.018. It's a little bit lower than 1.02, but even with doing that salinity, the ciliate was still living. It was still being.
Certain ones. It's going to depend on the species what it will
And there were
kill.
3 species initially when I got the seahorses diagnosed.
Yeah. Well, wait. Sorry, go ahead.
I think
go ahead.
they're still around
guys,
at
we got
1.020, just not as prevalent. Because I keep my salinity low, and I still have ciliates, but I think it's not as bad as it could be.
It's managing.
It's all about the managing it.
And I was going to say, didn't we discover after talking last week that the 3 species of ciliates actually came on the combs? Like, it wasn't your water, it wasn't anything like that.
It wasn't my water.
So,
it was due to it just being in bad husbandry habitat.
So what I'm saying, right, but not yours. It was in the last place where they had bad husbandry. So what I'm saying is, they already had the ciliates up in their gills and messing them up. And then you put them in your tank, and I'm sure, yes, some came off and had, reproduced or whatnot. But I'm betting that with your husbandry, your tank is probably okay. Like once
So
you took the seahorses out and treated the seahorses.
Yeah. So even though that I would hope for that result, I did a lot of research because for the Comus tiger tail habitat, I'm trying to teach my kiddos more about the marine environment and how these different things can be set up. So for the tiger tails, it's in a reef soft coral habitat set up at the moment, and ciliates can also infect coral species as well. And even though I have removed the seahorses from the tank, another primary concern is even though the seahorses may have been affected, can the corals be affected as well? And from what I've been seeing, some of the corals do look a little bit unhappy. So bleaching has been happening for a couple of the mushrooms that I have. And this hasn't happened before, especially because I keep up with the maintenance. So then
how long have you had the coral? It can't be lighting or anything like that.
It's with lighting, but my lighting is all perfect according to all these other aquarists. I have the Marine Orbit LED lights, so I can manually adjust it. So it's not the lighting, it's definitely something that has to do with that's already prevalent in the water at this point. And so I've taken the hydrogen peroxide method that Dan had mentioned last week, and I started applying it throughout this week. And I noticed that initially it seemed like everyone was being a lot happier. And then when I did the second dose, it like tanked. Like all my inverts started falling off the glass, but they were still alive. They were just acting a little bit paralyzed, if that makes sense. So that was another concern that I had with the hydrogen peroxide method. But the reason why hydrogen peroxide is another easy solution just to dose the tank, even though I was betting I was going to have some deaths, is because it's more widely available and it's, in my opinion, a lot harsher to use in a display tank than any chemical that's on the market, such as chloroquine, phosphate, or formalin. And in the past month, I've been testing out different display tank treatments, such as the Rally Reef Pro medication that has a little bit of the formalin and 2 other chemicals that I can't remember. That's supposed to be reef safe, and that also showed a sort of a beneficial effect, but not to the point where it went over their hump.
I'm glad.
I would be very careful about using multiple things, and the reason
this is all within a couple days between treatments because I'm making sure I do every water change to remove whatever previous medication was in the tank, so that there was no interactions happening.
I got you on the interactions. The reason, wait, guys, we can't all talk at the same time. Cheryl, you're next, I promise. What I was going to say is the reason that I always say don't do too many things at once, even if it's just adjust, like me with my 40. I want to get rid of the algae. I'm going to do one thing at a time, even if the algae remains, because if you do a bunch of things, you don't really know, even with big water changes, you don't really know what fixed the problem. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Because so I would try one thing continuously for a while, and then because they're okay in the hospital tank. I mean, they're okay.
No, my seahorses have been separated at this point. I just left the corals in the tank because that's a lot more.
And you don't want to lose the corals too. Cheryl, what were you going to say?
I was going to say one of the things you need to be aware of. I've talked with so many people. You already
you're good.
You had already treated them with the formalin, or you had already treated them with the H2O2?
Only seahorses I've treated with the formalin and the H2O peroxide bath as directed by the fish doctor that I haven't seen at the moment. The medication treatment for the display tank is something completely separate from my seahorses at the moment.
You were asking,
and in the past,
can you mix if you have already used? I think it was if you'd already used formalin. Can you add peroxide? Well,
so my
I want to make
for
a point here because this could prove very serious. If you mix hydrogen peroxide with formalin, it turns to formic acid.
Yeah, that's very toxic.
Yeah,
don't do it.
It's a death sentence. So
great point, Cheryl. That's why we. And we don't.
I go above and beyond in my anxiety. So my question was, if there's residue of the hydrogen peroxide on the seahorses, how long should I wait before doing the formalin bath for the seahorses? No.
Dan told us that last week. I believe I'd have to go back and replay the video, but I believe hydrogen peroxide dissipates. I'm going to say 12 hours, but it's probably much less. It dissipates.
It's a lot less.
Yeah.
But I
Yes.
gave it a day just in case before applying the formalin.
Formic acid is not something you want to play around with.
No, it's really bad for your health and for our sister's health. To say the least.
And I never
found that
and wear gloves.
chemistry.
Humblefish for what Humblefish said for peroxide dosing was to start out with 1 milliliter per 10 gallons, 8 hours. Then you can gradually increase it up to 1 milliliters per 3 gallons. She said she didn't have any problems with her corals or invertebrates or anything as long as she gradually it up. She started with the 1 per 10.
Holly, will you put that link? Holly, will you put that link in the comments? Even the private
I don't
chat,
have a
'cause
link. I have it in my notes.
So one question, I remember seeing that thread. So I wanted to ask another question that came up during my research is if the hydrogen peroxide dosage is really low, because the dosage that we were discussing last week was 1 milliliter per 1 liter of salt water as being the therapeutic dosage for the ciliate infection. If it's diluted to that level where it's 1 milliliter per 10 gallons, is that even going to have an effect? Because at that point, I'm assuming the hydrogen peroxide would just dissipate within the less hours that it's in there. But what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I just want to say we are going to discuss this right now, but peroxide and probiotics and breeding is what Dan will cover completely in Ask Seahorse Source Part 3, which is next month. So stay tuned. But go ahead, Cheryl, what's your because I'm not really sure.
First of all,
wait. Holly, talk.
Well for her.
But what was she doing it for?
It was for ciliates. That's why I wrote it down. Yeah, she was ciliates. Yeah. And that's how she said to do it. And she'd do during the day and probiotics at night.
Yeah. That's the other thing. There are other alternatives for some of this stuff. If you use the probiotics, it's going to help keep the tank much cleaner because it's going to generate bacteria that will consume the detritus. That's one key. Another one, and this is where a lot of people get in trouble, with particularly people that are new to the hobby. Everything I have, and I've said this multiple times, goes through quarantine. Nothing goes in always quarantine. And my quarantine tanks typically are 29 gallons with 20-gallon sumps. And that means I can always look at the Seahorses or whatever else I've got and assess them on a regular basis. And I think some of you have seen the picture of my beautiful big Combs male, but you've also seen the picture of him when I first rescued him from the store and he looked like he was 90% dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a long, gradual process to get him back. But he did come back and live with me for right about 8 years in my house. He was an adult male when I got him. But the only reason I was able to do that is I had him in a small tank that was maintained specifically for sterility. And each time he'd show a different symptom, I'd have to go back and do the treatment again. I mean, he had ciliates, he had all kinds of problems, and he was emaciated.
And that's similar to my situation, which is why I listen to Dr. Cheryl, and I always ask her for advice.
So Cheryl, with that being said, if a person can do it. So like if you're new and you're watching this show, please don't let it scare you. Seahorses, you won't get into all this deep stuff if you're keeping erectus and you got them from a good breeder. You'll never face any of this stuff, or at least not to the level that Francis is. You're gonna have you still stay tuned for the peroxide episode because it's really great to use and there's other benefits with probiotics and stuff. But it doesn't have to be this complicated if you're brand new. But in Francis's case, since he is capable of having, couple tanks, a hospital tank and stuff, Cheryl, would you advise him to keep the Seahorses in the hospital tank for quite a while, just to because he's not going to do sterility. He's going to do mushrooms and different stuff.
Yeah, I personally, until he was 100% sure that they are totally healthy, I would not bring them into a tank that you cannot treat. Bottom
And
line.
Dr. Cheryl, for everyone to listen in, whoever's listening, she's been teaching me different symptoms to watch out for, such as the gill color. I didn't know that until last night, that the gill color, if it's really dark, is a sign of infection. I think is what you said, right, Dr. Cheryl?
Hey,
Yeah.
I have a question about that. And we're hoping one day that Dan and Cheryl will write a dang book with all the symptoms.
Yeah.
Every time they say something, I go do a write-up,
Well,
and I've got them all prepared, but it's not going to be the same as them writing a book.
the-
But Cheryl,
the
wait,
thing
I
is-
want to ask you something. When their snout, I always get nervous as heck if their snout gets dark. If they're a lighter seahorse and all of a sudden at the tip of their snout or their whole snout gets dark, I'm always worried. Is that a symptom? Or Dan said it's not, but I'm curious.
I have a male that I got from Alicia. He is normally orange, but he has dark stripes on his snout. Now,
Oh.
depending on his mood, when he starts courting the ladies, you can't see the stripes. When he decides to take on his yellow phase, they really stick out. And I kid about it. It looks like he has a Barbary snout because of
Wow.
all. And I knew that he was what you see is what you get, and I already knew he had that on his snout. And in his case, it's nothing. It's normal. But see, that's what you need to. That's the difficulty, particularly with somebody that's new. Is I've been at this long enough. I can look at a seahorse and go, "Oh, shit."
Right.
Whereas somebody that's brand new, they're not going to be able to. They're not seeing the seahorse in the same way that I am. And it's a whole different thing. I mean, the reason I was able to save that pair of combs is I'd already been working with combs for over 3 years by the time I got that pair.
Right. You
I
had
knew
experience.
what up and get. We had the histopath from ones that didn't make it. I'd already experimented, and so did some others, with the use of chloroquine phosphate and getting 100% mortality when we treated them initially. And there were just a lot of the things that went into it that made it work.
Gotcha. Well, Cheryl, I'm going to say it again. We need you to write a symptoms list because that would be key. If you in the audience, whether you watch it right now or later, I know a bunch of you watch it later on Friday or whatever, comment, say, Cheryl, we want the symptoms list.
Well, the problem is too, I can explain to you, it's like I was explaining to Francis, if the operculum starts getting dark, that's a sign of ciliates in the operculum and gills. The problem is though, but you get a dark spot because there's a shadow there. Don't panic. That's normal.
Right. It's hard to say that because
but the thing is, it's only going to work with light colored seahorses. It doesn't work if they're dark brown.
Right.
Because
sorry, I'm getting ready to pull up Francis's pictures if I can. If I'm able.
Yeah, I think Dr. Cheryl might be able to explain a little bit more about their gill and the coloration changes to kind of better explain our current topic.
Okay, here we go. Cheryl, take a look. These are the pictures I believe he already sent you.
Okay. Okay, that's the female.
Do you want to see the other one? Okay, go ahead, Cheryl. Sorry.
Now, okay, look at the operculum right there. But that operculum, if you look at it, the lower portion of the seahorse is light. That tells me that the light is the dark spot there is not a problem. It's the way the lighting is hitting the seahorse.
And can you really quickly just what's an operculum?
The covering over the gill structure.
Okay.
That's then,
oh, sorry, wrong way. All right, and then this boy.
Okay. Again, it's a little hard to tell from that picture.
It's a little blurry. Sorry.
You need a close up of the actual seahorse.
Let me do a little better one.
Okay, I was trying to zoom in. It's not working. Sorry, guys. Go ahead.
All right.
Sorry.
I'll edit it real quick.
But Cheryl, you were saying?
Well, and also if the seahorse normally, if all of a sudden they start hard gilling, breathing really hard and really inflating the operculum, bringing it out, and when they do that, it's turning dark, you've got some serious problems with that seahorse.
And typically ciliates?
Typically, but yeah.
There we go. I just sent a picture to Kelly.
Yeah, oftentimes they will. Each time they breathe, they'll be pulling their trigger down because they can't. They're having it's in their oral cavity as well, and
Yeah.
it's making it next to
Oops.
impossible. Now, perfect. Okay,
So this is the other one.
yeah. Again, that seahorse looks beautiful and normal. There's no. If he was having problems, he'd have his trigger would be distended.
Ah,
That's the kind of stuff. Those are the things I look for when I'm assessing some of this stuff. But it's
And just as,
something
hmm
it's something you learn over time. It's not something that
yeah,
you instantaneously know. When
that
I
I didn't know.
right.
Until I got taught by
Go
Dr.
to
Cheryl.
what
go to
happens
Seahorse Sources group and ask Dr. Cheryl. There you go.
Right?
And
well,
also Cheryl, I was curious because people talk about this all the time. I've heard that before about the amount of breathing and etc. How is there a specific? I know it's different for species, but like what everybody says if they're breathing hard, but seahorses, to me, they all breathe hard. Like I mean, not breathe. I'm saying it wrong, but
but if
they're
if they're sitting hitched and kind of half asleep, they shouldn't be breathing hard. If they're
right.
dancing and courting, they're going to be breathing really hard. And
Yeah.
so you need to assess what the
What they're doing.
respiratory rate is like, depending on the circumstances they're in.
So I
That when
wanted
they're
to ask.
thinking,
Wait, hang on, Francis, real quick before you
So
ask,
sorry.
and I'm going to let you. I promise. No, we're all excited to be here and ask questions. I know, but
Yeah.
Cheryl, is there a? Do you have? I mean, I know what I understand what you just said, but is there a seahorse should move their mouth to breathe or whatever you call it when they're underwater, this many times a minute if they are sitting? Is there anything like that, or is it just you just know by learning?
I think the only way I can really describe it is it comes after seeing a lot of seahorses and seeing a lot of good and a lot of bad come out of it. My breath breathe hard when they see me coming with food. Yeah,
Yes, true.
stimuli. You walking up
So
can increase the respiratory rate. A mate coming over to them can increase their respiratory rate. Courtship will increase their respiratory rate. If they're battling over who's going to get that piece of mysis shrimp, that can increase their respiratory rate. So you need to look for the other signs: the trigger breathing, the
I like the
darkening of
trigger
the
thing.
operculum,
Yeah.
the mouth staying
so
for prolonged periods of time. It not. Well, did any of you see that picture that I posted of the Combs fry?
yeah, I saw so cute. The really quick
Mhm.
pick and release frame one.
Wait a
Yeah.
minute. Wait a minute. Combs fry?
It's so cute.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a
Oh,
picture
sorry.
of a 9-day-old hippocampus Combs, but somehow I managed to get both the snick and the relaxation on the same
Afterwards.
picture frame.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
it was awesome. It's still one of my favorites.
And
The
were they
thing
all
is,
that yellow?
huh?
The fry was the combs naturally that yellow color? Because
Yeah.
mine were black.
Well,
And that's a sign of unhealthiness. So
yeah.
No,
what is that?
no. Wait, I am going to interrupt everybody to
Wait,
just
wait.
say,
Let me.
don't ever compare yourself to Cheryl, ever. She is,
Or her
Okay,
she is
seahorses.
Dr. Cheryl.
hold on.
Anyways, go ahead. Go
What I
ahead,
was
Cheryl.
saying is, and the point I was making is, this is how fast the snick should be in a healthy seahorse.
Mm.
If they are, the trigger extends, the mouth opens, it opens, it opens, it opens, then it finally goes back. You got a problem.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
really good.
yawning? Would you say it's kind of like a yawning behavior that we should watch out for then?
That's
I always
exactly
said
what I call
coughing.
it. Yes,
Coughing.
Oh,
Yeah.
coughing. Okay.
coughing, or they'll do coughing and yawning.
Ah, I see. Okay. So one of my questions that I had that's a little bit related with the color changes in the pictures that I sent to Kelly that was shown, one of them has like a white snout and the other one has a darker snout. And I
That's
remember
normal.
Kelly kind of mentioning that, does the darker snout signify that there's an issue? But I think in seahorses' case, since they are masters of camouflage, I think that's one of their body parts that they can naturally change out well.
Yeah, the thing is
Okay.
that, again, it comes down to knowing what each species should be doing.
Should be doing.
Yeah, combs. It's like trying to assess a dark brown erectus is much more difficult than a yellow combs, because the yellow combs is brighter and easier to visualize.
Yeah.
But there's very specific things that I'm looking for when I'm assessing a seahorse.
Okay.
And
does the thing about
it's
the
taken me
gills hold true though, the operculum? So if they're dark, you know, over
if the
their
Or red.
gills,
if the seahorse is let's say the seahorse is yellow,
Yeah.
and the only place that they're dark, they look like they have two basketballs stuck on the operculum. There's something wrong with that
Right.
seahorse.
Mhm.
But
And the holes are normal,
it's got to be
right?
it's got to be careful too,
Yeah,
because
the
if that's
holes
their natural
will be
color.
dark. Yeah, the holes will be dark.
Okay, that's good to know.
And
Yeah,
would
I
that's
remember when I
normal.
it
first
be
saw them,
both sides then, Trickle, so that they'd be dark
it should be.
on both sides,
Not always. They're
right?
not always
No.
going to be
Or
symmetrical.
not?
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember when I
it's always
first saw
not
the
always.
holes- when I first saw the holes last night on the Seahorse, I freaked out. I texted Dr. Cheryl. I was like, "What is this? Is this normal? Is this the lesions like I've been reading up about?" But no, it's just air. It's just their little gills.
Remember, when the seahorse, they open their mouth, they bring in water, and part of it goes out through basically through the top of their head.
Yeah.
But remember too, that jaw, what's opening that jaw and bringing it back is a circular rotation created within the jaw structure. So when that snaps back, it's putting more pressure on one side than the other.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why you won't see it exact in both holes.
Okay. Because they'll
That makes
probably be swollen on
fascinating.
one side due to the infection.
Yeah.
The other side may not be as heavily infected, let's say, with the ciliate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, guys, and
Would you
listen.
say darkness would be the only quality that that people should watch out for, or will the color change depending on the color of the base seahorses more?
It can. The biggest thing you're looking for, and this is why I like light-colored seahorses, is I look for the darkening, what I call the basketball effect.
The basketball.
And also, when a seahorse is breathing, they're both of them are going to be going. And if one side is not working properly, in other words, it's not that is bilateral. One side won't just stop moving. If you've got that, or one isn't breathing at the same rate, you probably have an infection going on.
Yep,
And-
that's what Dan said, is look straight on and
Yeah.
see if they're going at the same rate. Good point.
Yeah.
Go
That's
ahead,
trying to-
Francis, because what I was going to say, guys, I'm so sorry, but don't forget, I've got to go do my coding class, so I'm giving us a 10-minute warning. No, 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes more. Go ahead. Any questions? Or just chit-chat?
I think that's pretty much the only question that I had, was how to identify the operculum, or I can't pronounce it. The gills. There we go.
Yeah, gills.
Because the color is what can be a little bit tricky. I feel like in my situation, I've got two species, the Hystrix and the Comes. And the Hystrix, because the Comes looked fine, after confirming with Dr. Cheryl, I went to look at the Hystrix gills to see if I could see a darkening of the color around that area, but it seems more pinkish rather than dark.
My Barbori had the same thing.
So I'm assuming that's like a healthy sign, because it's symmetrical on both sides and they're both breathing appropriately. So perfect.
That's my Barbori. My Barbori were like almost what I would describe as see-through. They were so beautiful. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then their gills were pink.
Too.
Yeah. And then their gills were, I got to go see pictures. I got to go to Seahorses group and go look at your pictures, Francis, because now I'm excited.
Yeah. I love them. I hope they breed. I hope I've got a pair. We'll see. I think they're still a little young, though, because there's no pouch I could see.
We desperately need Cheryl and you to start producing combs, and you to start producing Barbori. We want more species. But
Soon.
Yeah, combs are much harder to raise than erectus. I can tell you that.
That is true.
Yeah,
it's a lot more difficult.
And Cheryl, we're gonna quiz you on Ask Seahorse Source, because you're kind of part of Seahorse Source, part 3 on raising combs, because he's gonna cover breeding, but we want to hear from you about specifically combs, because I'm sure it's
Well, the first thing to know about the hippocampus combs, when they're born, they have at least 3 that I have been able to photograph tail appendages at the end of their tail.
really
Oh,
Yeah, I've got pictures.
cool.
Yeah.
that is cool.
Is it like a
And-
mutation
Sure.
Well, I think it's the thing
or
is
injury?
they use their tails like a finger when they, as a whole when they're doing a whole
Oh,
fast
it's kind of
searching the house.
curling.
Well,
Mhm.
what happens is over time, those become one in terms
Okay.
of the appearance of the tail, but there's something in the musculature that is not consistent with many other species. And
That's
the tip of the
awesome. That is
Oh,
awesome. And Cheryl, I want you to please send me your pictures when you get time this week, and we'll show them next week.
I've got about 10,000.
Okay, well, just the fingers.
send.
I've actually got photos of the tail of a newborn
Okay.
hippocampus combs under a microscope. And
Oh,
you can
shit.
actually
Oh,
see
wow.
the fin structure on them.
You got to
Wait.
send me these pictures so we can show them next week. Or you could show them, but go ahead. Go ahead,
Dr.
Francis.
Cheryl, what microscope do you use? I kind of want to buy my own at the next couple of months to kind of try to identify certain issues on my own as well. Would you recommend a certain one online in terms of a microscope?
At this point, my microscope is one that came from the University of Colorado in Denver.
Oh, wow.
And-
So it's like academic.
You know
And
what, though? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
Yes.
Cheryl.
So I'm not the best person to ask because that's a very old microscope that I was using.
Okay.
Well, I would
No
say
worries.
I actually asked Dan that question and a few other people in the scientific world, and
Yeah.
I'm going to check my notes and I'll message you, Francis. But remind me next week
Yeah.
to go over the notes, because
Hey.
that's a great question. I think a microscope. I think a
Would be
microscope should
helpful.
be. Yeah, I think a microscope should be part of the medicine kit for seahorses.
Picture
I
I posted
agree.
of the 9-day-old combs. Basically, I caught the snick and the relaxation in the same frame.
Yeah.
That was shot with a 105 millimeter macro lens that did not have an autofocus, that was specifically designed for use for dental surgeons.
As I said, folks, never
Of course.
compare yourself to Cheryl. Never, ever compare yourself to Cheryl, because she's just the seahorse goddess, all right?
Like I
The
will
rest of us
admit,
are whisperers. She's the goddess.
yeah.
Hey, I learned a
I
lot
would-
from my mentor, Dan.
Right, of course. Of course. But you're amazing. And just, an update, by the way, I didn't get any responses to the Aquashella Orlando opportunity, but guess what, guys?
What?
Seahorse Savvy is donating the dwarfs and going to FaceTime with them, and she's going to actually so
That's
Seahorse Savvy is the
cool.
one doing it. So it's gonna be amazing. So even if
Oh,
you
that's
can't go to
great.
Aquashella Orlando, go check it out, the videos and the pictures, because they're gonna show you how to do a dwarf tank, all right? And then I'll
with you-
be
There's people
Sorry.
that could be very,
all-
very helpful.
and we all do this, Francis. We all interrupt each other. It's okay. But I was going to say, and Kelly will be doing the Chicago show. So be sure to be there or pay attention to the pictures. But go ahead. Anybody else can talk.
Is there a habitat setup difference between, let's say, dwarves and like the bigger species of seahorses? And if so, what
Absolutely.
the new owners try to watch out for? 'Cause I think there's a misinformation out there that says dwarves are easier, but in my line of research, I feel like they're way more intricate. But because of their
Yes.
small stature and baby brain chip is easy to cultivate, lots of people are thinking, I feel like, that they could do a lot of things with it, but I know due to other potential factors, that might not be the best scenario for them.
Okay,
So
let me
what are
answer
your guys'
first.
thoughts?
Sorry. Let me answer first, and then we're going to go to Cheryl, and then I'm going to follow up with Holly and see if she's got anything to say. But
Sure.
about anything, Holly, just catch up with you because you haven't had a chance to talk. We're
And I
all
wanna
talking. We all get
hear
excited about
thing
talking.
too.
I
But-
did in the beginning.
Yep, you got to go back and watch the beginning, Francis. But my points would be, I actually did a video about this already. Go watch how to set up a dwarf seahorse tank. And the bottom line is, dwarfs are just like fry. Okay, they're not easier. They require live foods. No one's been able to train them onto frozen.
Yes,
So
I
dwarf
I
seahorse.
know 2 people that have.
Okay, well, 2 people out
2
of everybody.
in
Anyways,
that was 17 years.
right. So my point is, they're not easier. They require live foods. You can't keep hardly anything with them because they're so tiny. Like if you get a hydroid
Like
infection,
hydroid.
if you get a hydroid infection in a
They're
regular
gone.
seahorse tank, it sucks. In
They're
a dwarf
done.
tank, they're gone. So you're talking live feeds, nothing in the tank because they won't last in a tank that has a bunch of stuff. You have to feed in a certain way. Yes, they want a smaller tank, but Dan and Lucy's recommendation was do a smaller tank with a huge sump. And
Yeah.
hopefully at Aquashella Orlando, Seahorse Savvy is going to show how they set up a dwarf tank, and it will be amazing and it will be beautiful, and you can make it beautiful. But for long lasting, if you're looking at breeding and whatnot, it's a lot more feeding, it's a lot harder. And Dan always says, why, in a dwarf seahorse tank, you gotta like just to see them. I mean, they're so tiny.
They're
So
really small.
I go watch the video about how to set up a dwarf tank. I could do the comparison. I say how they're different from regular species, and but I'm going to let Cheryl speak, and then Holly, and then Francis. Go ahead, Cheryl.
It ain't going to happen in my lifetime. I have enough to do with raising the bigger ones without having perpetual babies.
Right, they're perpetual babies. Exactly. Did I miss anything? And if you want to keep dwarf seahorses, again, go to Aquashell Orlando and check out the Seahorse Savvy display, or watch the video or whatnot. But I mean, you can do it. It's just more work. It's a lot more work.
Real quick, a friend of mine who lives in the Netherlands who raised dwarf seahorses for a number of years, and he actually used to propagate Moena salina for them on a continuous basis. So he was not feeding brine shrimp, enriched brine shrimp. He was feeding actual pods to them.
Oh.
And he had huge, him and one other friend of mine that also set up a similar kind of self-sustaining habitat, they would get 16 or 17 fry out of a single male versus most people will get 5 or 6, maybe 8 if it's a huge. They were doubling their production, but it was all based on the diets that they were feeding.
And you're doing something about diets, aren't you?
I'm sorry?
You're doing something with copepods, aren't you, right now? You're like taking data on certain copepods that might be healthier than baby brine shrimp options.
Yeah, the thing is, I cultivate amphipods. I've cultivated mysis shrimp. I'm out of mysids right now.
Mysid.
But I'm also work with Apocyclops panamensis copepods. It's a great first food for species like combs that produce small pelagic fry, because they are also pelagic, and they're just the right size for the seahorses. Because you're talking about something that's going to be at birth is probably only going to be about maybe 4, maybe 5. When my one big male got really old, he was actually, I used to think, man, you got a 1/2-inch baby there.
But Cheryl is experimenting with feeding, and she's done a lot of research. I know Tammy did an excellent article. I hope someday FuseJaw is back online, the website, because she did an amazing article.
We have access to it.
Yes, I know, and we've linked it before. And Cheryl is definitely going to teach us about feeds, and we need to talk about that self-sustaining system, because that's something people really enjoy learning about. So I'm putting that on the list.
This is why you put in a huge sump, because you can propagate pods in your sump, and as small as they are, they will make it through your filters, and basically your sump can continuously feed. I have friends that have done this with their reef tanks for feeding their corals, exactly using the same principle.
And Cheryl, I have one really simple question. I think we've answered it before, but I always forget.
I don't know.
It happens. Me too.
No. Listen, what's the difference between mysis and mysids?
It depends on who you want to get into a discussion with.
Oh boy.
Okay.
So
mysis shrimp is freshwater shrimp.
Okay.
My Sid shrimp is saltwater. However, in fact, I just pulled it up because I got annoyed by somebody. And reading Reef to Reef and several others, people use them interchangeably all the time.
Right.
And this is why when I order shrimp for feeder shrimp, I always ask, are these freshwater or saltwater? Because
you're right, because I believe that Hikari is saltwater, but they call it mysis, and then PE is freshwater, but they call it mysis.
No, PE and jumbo Hikari are out of pristine lakes, freshwater lakes.
Right.
They're freshwater.
San Francisco Bay and Hikari, the regular stuff, actually are coming out of brackish water.
Oh,
they're
not
called
even saltwater.
Papaconas or Japaconas, I believe.
Yeah.
Ooh.
They live in the ocean.
So we just don't have any frozen actual saltwater mysids. Did I say that right? Yeah.
Okay. The problem is there was somebody a couple years ago that was actually harvesting mysids out of the ocean, and he wasn't propagating them; he was just collecting them and then selling them. The problem is mysids are carnivorous.
Oh, they're terrible.
Well, they're cannibals, basically. They're cannibalistic, which makes them very difficult. So you need to have, if you're going to raise them, and I've set up the mysid generators before, and you need to have it in such a way that the newborns, as soon as they're born, get flushed into a separate compartment.
Oh.
And
I found something interesting.
So they don't get eaten.
So now we have to do another show where Cheryl talks and shows us pictures and explains the mysids.
Just go to MLB. Just go to MLB. MBL, Marine Breeder Laboratory. They've got all the diagrams and everything there.
So speaking of all that, another thing that surviving besides Thing 2 was a couple weeks ago.
Oh, no.
I tried to put in amphipods for him. Cheryl said, well, if you put in some of your amphipods, they can want to eat more. So I put in some amphipods. Well, he didn't eat them, but they're in the hospital still because when I clean out his tank, they're hiding underneath his coral. It has a little hollow, and they go in there and they come out at night and eat whatever leftovers they find on the floor.
My last purchase was 2,000. Was it 2,000 Bromeris amphipods? You know what they get for breakfast every morning? Thawed mice and shrimp.
There you go.
And they swarm onto it.
Mine's lake food. Mine get fish, see them eat, but they're alive, so they must be eating.
Oh yeah,
I've had them a few months now, but I'm that rock thing I showed you guys. They go in there, they go in the sponge filter because I still don't have rock, and some of them will hang out during the day. I do see them floating plastic plant. And some of them like to hang out. A few of them do, not a bunch. So I see them, and they're alive. Their water change now, and I just put food in every day. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with you guys, but here you are.
Hey,
because my seahorses
maybe they'll get to that point.
Just keep expanding because I've got so many of them, and I've got them in several tubs in nursery systems. And I can go in and scoop out 15, 20 of large ones in about a minute or two. The hardest part is getting them out of the damn net so the seahorses can go. And the seahorses,
I bet. I don't think mine are reproduced because it's been cold. Water, I don't think, is warm enough for them to be really happy. Other than a week of spring, and they got some 70s, but mostly heater, the house gets so cold they're bringing it by 60s, if that, generally. So they're making it through, but they're not actively breeding so much, I don't think.
I walk up turn on a light so they get a little bit. They don't like a lot of light because too much light and they'll go and hide. Turn it up,
That's
get it
kind
just
of
right.
what Ray was saying. He said if you go at night, they'll come out for a red light.
I haven't had to do that.
Is
When
that
I
true?
start turning up the lights, they have figured out incoming food.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, they're shy still. They don't.
Well,
don't.
Holly,
Mine
okay,
Oh.
Holly, I have a suggestion. Sell them. Even if your seahorses won't eat them, somebody else's will, or sell them to reef people. Everybody loves
Send it to
amphipods.
me.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I just got a pack.
And
But
wait,
like
wait,
I
wait, wait.
said,
I wanted
I'm
to ask.
pretty sure I just have my initial supply. Maybe some more. I can't tell how many I don't think I have like untold amounts yet.
Well, it'll get better. And Miss Holly, was I supposed to send you Rubble Rock? Because I can still, if you just remind me.
You were.
Okay.
But...
No, remind me tomorrow. I'm sending it. I'm so sorry. Guys, see, I suck. I mean, if I've let you down, look, I suck. Okay. Too much on the plate. And Chris asked for a link. I was getting ready to end this because I have to go do my damn homework. But Chris, if you jump in, I can let you talk for a few minutes anyways. Let's see. I just sent the link to him.
Yeah, on that note, I love
You out of here?
amphipods.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
think they're amazing. And the storefront that I got, my initial shipment, there was like a problem with it where I felt like there was like an ammonia issue in the bag. But they replaced it for free, and they actually gave me 2 extra thousand pods. So I'm like kind of happy, and they're all healthy this time around. So yeah,
Okay,
I love amphipods.
I'm gonna tell you a real quick funny story.
Okay.
Back when I was working with hippocampus engines, I ordered 1 million rotifers from what was then Reed Nutrition. Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, so I had to call back the next week because I had to order some copepods. And me being me, I told the guy, I said, "Oh, you shorted me 1,001 rotifers of the million that you sent me." He goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix this. I'm going to send you a whole new shipment." And I'm like, "No."
Yeah, I'm joking.
I was kidding with him. And I said, if I tried counting those, I'd still be sitting there counting them.
Yeah.
There's got to be
the reason why I
scoop
chose
or
the
something they
amphipods
use
is
to
the
measure them,
differences.
like a little beaker or something.
Yeah.
That they put them in to make this tube or something.
They use light. Yeah, they use light.
This level is that many.
He was ready to send me another 1 million rotifers. And I'm like,
That's
no,
amazing.
I've got 5 tubs full of rotifers.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I don't need any more. That's what I was working with engines.
Do you have to be super careful, Cheryl, not to get rotifers in the other cultures?
I haven't had a problem, but I've only used them in when I was raising engines.
Oh, gotcha.
As a first food.
So that's small. I thought rotifers were smaller than copepods. No,
they are. Yeah,
they are.
But
see,
engines
really big.
Very.
Engines get to over 12 inches, but they tend.
But the fry are tiny.
200
really small.
Fry.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm talking, my nursery tubs. I've had some big broods. You look at. I've got pictures of my nursery tubs with engines in them, and it's just a wall of baby seahorses.
Why is that? I mean, like, what's your thoughts about that scientifically, Cheryl? Like, why would the biggest seahorse species have smallest fry?
I think it's a combination of factors. Typically, when they evolve, they evolve to adapt to their environment.
Yep.
And that's going to be one factor. Another factor is the pairs that I had, quite frankly, were only a couple years old. They were still babies themselves. And I know for a fact, as seahorses mature and get to, to 5 years or older, they typically produce much larger, more viable fry than they do when they're real young. And so I don't know. I've seen some photos of engines fry.
Oh no!
Uh-oh.
You cut off, Cheryl.
Did
you said
we lose?
Yeah, and it's that's why I kid about it. People are like, "Well, you got that male. You've had him 6 months. He's courting. Why aren't you raising any seahorses?" Because he's going to have little bitty weeny fry that are going to be a total pain to raise. And it's I do try to raise them, but and I told Heather and others too that have young seahorses. And Dan's even said, he goes, until they get to 5 years old, they're gonna have small fry.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that one.
Oh, wow.
5 years? Wow.
And I've seen it I've seen combs out of my one of my older pairs. Typically they will not hitch until 2 to 3 weeks of age. I have had broods from much older pairs where the fry were much larger that hitched at birth. So
I'm thinking maybe if a big species like that is having smaller fry and larger batches, that less of them survive.
Yeah, that's what Dan said
That's
last
one
week.
piece.
Yeah.
So it's nature's way of giving them a better chance of survival.
But when I'm talking little fry, I'm talking, they look like an eyelash.
Wow.
Literal.
That's small.
Yeah. And I know for a fact that that tiny would have virtually no chance of making it in the wild.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, some do apparently. I mean,
Well,
Yeah,
the thing is,
that's probably why they have so many. Because don't they also? Or isn't that one of the species that has a lot of fry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, somebody just posted. Dan said his best broodstock is over 5, because by the time they get to be 5, they're getting quite large. I got a male,
And they
years
know
ago
what
from
they're
Germany.
doing. I bet, unlike mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, but I do think that would surprise a lot of people because most people think seahorses only live a year. I mean, we've had people that have kept seahorses for 14 years. What's your longest time, Cheryl, keeping seahorses?
The longest would probably be my wild caught Paracombs that I patched back, because they were full grown, large adults, and I kept them in my home for over 8 years. And when I say full grown, they were in the 6 to 7 inch range. The female,
so they were already
they were big adults.
3 or something, right? Gotcha.
They were at least 3 to 5 years old when I got them, and they were with me for 8 years.
Yeah. My little Cheryl survived quite a bit. Anybody, Holly, you're still working on it, right?
Yeah, my oldest seahorse, going to be turning 3 March 1st.
Yeah.
So when you take care of the seahorses, you get good stock, you condition them properly if they're well caught, or you buy captive bred. That we want you to buy captive bred, and then you take care of them. You take care of the water quality. You set up based on the guide, and you take care of them. They're gonna live for you for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I'm curious what Seahorse Corner's record is. Well, she hasn't been in it that long, has she? That's not fair. Never mind. Sorry.
But longer than me, probably has 5, maybe 7. I'm thinking possibly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not much
And I'm
higher.
a noob.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. You're doing. Yeah, but you're doing the
compared to y'all.
research. You're doing the research.
Yeah, I
and
do.
you're
I
getting
do
there.
all the extra academic stuff to make sure
The
that they're
watch.
getting the best life possible.
You know what? You guys watch. Francis is going to end up. His combs are going to live to be 25.
I hope. That's my prayer. That's my wish.
But I will say, I'm sorry, Francis.
Ask.
Hang on, I'll let
so
you
good.
ask, Francis. I promise. But I was going to
so
say, the thing is, though, I think what
thing is-
Cheryl, hang on. What Cheryl and Dan have kind of said too is if you're trying to breed or you're trying to keep seahorses long term, you really are better off doing a sterile environment where you can keep them healthy and etc. If you're just looking for a seahorse tank and you just want to keep seahorses because you love them, don't worry about all that and just make a beautiful tank and enjoy it and take care of the water and they'll live for quite a few years. I mean, it's much longer than a year, but it's not a competition. I just wanted to clear that up. But go ahead, Francis.
I actually kind of lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, no, you're so good. It's not your fault. My brain just has lapses in memory every so often.
No worries, no worries. And hey, Chimp, nice to see you. And Seahorse Corner said, I have only one I started with 3 years ago, raising great grandbabies from my first pair, though.
From my one. Yes, she
from
has
my first
one
pair, though.
that a little over 3 years then, because if you start
Well,
with it 3 years, because I figure for Dandy, because I've had him, less time than that, but I have to figure in he was probably 5 old when I got it, because that's the age that Alyssa ships at, is when they're 5 months. So I counted back, from got him. So he should be about 3 years old right about now. I gave him a March birthday, so he's a Pisces. He's a Pisces.
Yeah.
Lovely. I'd have to actually check what age I lost Cheryl at, and I feel like it was old age, but who knows. But anyways, I'll check and I'll report back next week. But I thought Chris was going to join. Apparently he's not. But go ahead.
Aphrodite, I know off the top of my head I don't, but I have it written down, so we know her birthday.
Text it to me. We'll see how long I can keep her going. But no, and again, I mean, that's just kind of what I'm saying is, most people that are new that set up Seahorse tank, especially if they're not in Seahorse Sources group or coming to Wine Wednesday, they're going to set it up pretty. They're going to put a bunch of stuff in it. They're not interested in breeding, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? And then when someone like Holly or Seahorse Corner or myself decides, oh, you know what? They had fry and I didn't succeed the first time because, I didn't know what I was doing. Then they kind of research and figure out. And if someone wants to breed, then you get into all these details. And again, we'll cover it in Ask Seahorse Source Part 3 next month. But then there's specific things you can do to set up a sterile tank for your breeders, for your fry, etc. But if that's not what you're into, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a beautiful Seahorse tank. I mean, that was my first tank. I don't know how I got so lucky that my second pair, because the first pair was Hystrix, but my second pair of Erectus just ended up my huge breeders. I don't know how that happened because they were in a tank that wasn't very sterile, but they must have just been really macho mans. But
I raised a pair of female first combs I ever raised. I believe I got the fry in 2000. It was 2009. She passed away in 2000. That's not right. 2000. Yeah, she passed away in 2000. I want to say 18.
wow. But you, again, nobody compare yourself to Cheryl ever.
No,
ever,
it's just
ever.
I'm trying. I may be off on the dates. I'm trying to think back. She was definitely getting way up there.
Yeah. And it's terrible. Like when I lost my big first male Erectus, he was huge. He was purple. He was beautiful, and he gave me huge fry. And it was so sad the day that he passed. And I swear it was old age. I mean, who knows?
Probably.
But it was just awful.
Well, I'm just excited. I mean,
but anyways,
horse is Dandy, and Dandy's the one that's handicapped. Right. He has swimming shoes and stuff, but he's still around. He gets around and does his thing, and
because you take care of him, Holly.
I am, but you know what? It's a bit of challenging in a way that he had trouble getting to the horse dishes because they were up high. He wore a crown, because he didn't swim that well. Gave him his own little clamshell to eat.
And then the girls invaded.
It's the main attraction for every other seahorse. It's like, you know, when they're on the other side of the fence. Well, apparently the food is better in Dandy's dish because all
Love it.
they always come and eat on this little that's for Dandy. Like they think I must be giving him the best food or something. I don't know what it is.
Oh, that's so
They
cute.
can't let him have a special thing. And Seahorse
No.
Corner said she made a lot of mistakes along the way. You guys have helped a ton. What I want to say in response to that is we all help each other. Thank goodness for Seahorse Sources Group.
sure.
Thank goodness for Wine Wednesday. And you guys, Chris didn't join. I'm going to have to call it. If I don't get this assignment done by midnight, I'm going to be in trouble. So love you guys. I will talk more next week. I will rewatch this to make sure that I link whatever I said I'd link and do my assignments for Wine Wednesday, like getting Cheryl to talk more about the everlasting, I can't even remember the word, everlasting system, and, you know, let you know the date for the next Ask Seahorse Source, and make sure we get all the answers from next week. If you know my algae, tell me.
Yeah,
but
see
what?
if you can't get Art to come out too, because I read in the paper that he wrote.
He what?
I read the whole thing that he, from start to finish, that he put together and submitted.
Dan's trying. He's trying to get him. He's the one that's friends with him. So bug Dan, ask him when Art's coming, and we'll make sure to advertise when he is. And I was going to say something else, but now I've forgotten. Damn it. Okay. Well, anyways, love you guys. Oh, no, it was, Cheryl, I'm going to bug you, and I'll rewatch and remember this later, but I'm going to bug you to send me the pictures of the pronged comb's tail. That just sounds so cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that I've reminded her, we're going to end on that note, you guys. I'm sorry, Holly, I didn't give you more time to talk. I apologize. We'll give you first dibs next week, I promise. Everybody raise your glass. I got to do my homework. And
Mine's
the wine's almost
empty.
done. Okay. Well, happy Wine Wednesday, everybody. See you next week. Cheers.